Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. This is the final video in my series for The Dead Zone, in which I will be discussing the TV series which aired over the course of 2002 until 2007, with 6 seasons totaling 80 45-minute episodes. I wasn't sure how to approach the video for this TV series at first, and frankly, I'm still not. So here goes nothing. History and background. Details on this show's production and development are scarce, but here is what I managed to find. This show aired on the USA Network and was filmed in Canada. There was originally a 7th season planned, but due to low ratings and high production costs, the show was uneventfully canceled in December of 2007 without a series finale. It was rumored that the Sci-Fi Channel would be picking up the series, but the move never came to fruition. Is it by the book? So I decided to just start watching the show and write my script as I watched. This is going to be a bit different from my usual approach, but with this much content to cover, I figured it was the only way to do it. Right from the start of the first episode, this series plays closer to the book than the 1983 film adaptation. While there are some minor changes, scenes that the movie hadn't bothered to include at all find their way on screen. However, this series wastes no time, and within the first 15 minutes of the first episode, we see Johnny as a child, flash forward 20 years to Johnny as a school teacher, then Johnny at the fair with his girlfriend Sarah, Johnny having his car accident, then going into a coma, and immediately thereafter awakening from his coma. That's the first 15 minutes. The moment he has his car accident, to the moment he wakes up from his coma happens in the span of exactly 1 minute. I timed it. This does not bode well for the rest of the series. There are 80 episodes, and somehow within the first 1/3 of the first episode, they felt the need to cover nearly the first 100 pages of King's novel. I mean, they covered practically nothing from the novel, but rather removed the passage of time and everything that came with it from the book and just did away with so much of the story already. You've got 80 episodes, and yet you can't take the time to tell this part of the friggin' story? Anyway, after Johnny wakes up, the changes and omissions just keep coming, one after another in succession. However, some of the changes were made due to the fact that the show takes place in the late 90s and early 2000s, rather than the late 60s and early 70s, like the novel, so they get a pass in those instances. But this does not excuse the innumerable, seemingly arbitrary alterations that follow. It figures. Here you have a series with all the time in the world to tell a King story straight, and they go completely off the rails in less than 1 episode. I understand that adapting a book into a TV show requires some finessing and imagination, but I just can't imagine where this series is going to go over the course of the remaining 79 episodes. I also can't imagine myself finding the strength to watch all of them. Characters that played a major role in King's book have unceremoniously died while Johnny was comatose. Other characters that were not at all in the novel are made prominent characters in the show, and it's all just disappointing. We get a montage of Johnny in physical therapy so they can further speed things along, and then the day Johnny gets out of the hospital, he is already going into vigilante crime fighter mode and breaking into somebody's house. The pacing of this show sucks. And this is still episode 1. What is the rush? Did they just assume they would never get beyond season 1 without getting canceled, so they crammed as much into the first season as they possibly could, and then to the surprise of literally everyone involved, the show just kept getting renewed season after season? Alright, I've finished the first episode and I'm going to make a prediction right now before continuing. It is my prediction that this show goes on to make Johnny a psychic crime solver who works in tandem with the police to stop various crimes and would-be criminals, as well as a rotating cast of randoms over the course of the 6 seasons with a recurring through line that will include the 2 main villains from the novel, the Castle Rock Strangler and Greg Stilson. It's the only way they can fill 6 seasons while still being able to use the tagline, based on characters from the Stephen King novel. Let's hope I can watch enough episodes to either confirm or disprove this theory.
2,000 years later.
Well, before the end of the 2nd episode, part of my prediction is already busted. The Castle Rock Strangler mystery is solved. Just like that. How in God's name does this show go on for another 78 episodes? It just plows through so much of the content of the book at breakneck speed, and all within the first 2 episodes. And yes, I've only managed to watch 2 episodes so far.
1 eternity later.
Alright, so I've reached episode 4 and can confirm that one part of my prediction was correct. Johnny is solving case after case, mystery upon mystery, episode after episode on the behalf of strangers and one-off characters. Every episode has a new mystery to solve, none of which are from the book. It's a lot like your standard CSI or SVU propaganda show, or maybe a little bit like Scooby-Doo. Every episode is a new case that has no bearing on the next or previous episode. Other major differences from the book to the show are that in the book, when Johnny gets his visions, they come in brief, unreliable flashes. In this show, Johnny is inserted into the scene as if he were actually there, and he becomes one of the individuals from the scene, which enables him to interact with the other people in it as if he were that individual. So he is no longer just an observer that gets glimpses of the scenario or situation, but rather he is an active participant in lengthy, thoroughly explored scenes that leave little to the imagination. But not always. Sometimes he just sees what happened and that's that. Also, he doesn't have the power to behave as or act as himself in these scenes in which he becomes one of the individuals within one of the visions. He just sees one or sometimes several people as if he were that person. Additionally, he doesn't have to touch someone or hold an item of significance to get his visions. In one scene, he just reads some words off of a piece of paper and boom, he's transported. In another, he just stands in the general vicinity where something happened, and that's all it takes to set him off. The rules or triggers that cause these psychic visions are irregular at best. Okay, that's enough. Alright, so I've decided to stop here. I made it 5 episodes in, and while the show is loosely based on characters from the novel, and the first couple episodes dealt with the original story to an extent, that is where the similarities to King's book begin and end. I think it's safe to say that no one needs to watch me talk shit about this TV show over the course of its 6 seasons, so in the interest of sparing you what promises to be me bitching endlessly, let's just pull the plug now. After reading the descriptions of further episodes, it seems that Greg Stilson does find his way into the series in episode 13 of this first season, and his inclusion in the series continues throughout some of the second season's 19 episodes, which is objectively too many episodes. And Stilson's storyline persists throughout additional successive seasons, interspersed with numerous side quests and inconsequential one-off episodes, as I predicted. This style of TV show is just not for me. It's what I refer to as the supernatural model. Most episodes are dedicated to an episode-specific mystery or quest and essentially has no bearing on the overall plot. The plot line of one of these filler episodes is always resolved within the span of a single episode, while a concurrent main storyline is intertwined or is sometimes ignored entirely, with the occasional episode dedicated only to the main through story. I do want to point out that the acting, special effects, and overall quality of the show aren't terrible. I just can't bring myself to commit to a show that stops being about King's novel after the first 2 episodes and has just so many episodes of entirely unrelated, irrelevant filler. That being said, if you enjoy the supernatural model of TV show, there's a good chance you will really like this show and you should check it out. There are some creative ideas, twists, and changes to keep things at least somewhat interesting. That's it for the Dead Zone series. Next week I'll be starting in on King's 1980 novel Firestarter, a story that continues to influence the horror thriller genre to this day. New videos drop every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so please crush that bell with your finger smashers to get notifications. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty please with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.